Okay.
Right.
Next is Franklin County Economic Development Challenges and Opportunities document. I'll let Mike speak on that.
I put together at the beginning of the year a document that was essentially my personal observations and findings after just simply learning the ropes about the EDC board and the position, what I'm coming into, and I just simply started talking to folks. And I took a survey. I want to make it very clear that this document is nothing official in any official capacity. This is my own personal opinion, my own project that I went on. I talked to past and present EDC board members, multiple government officials at the local and regional and state level, multiple citizens and business owners, and I even spent considerable time talking to Frank just about the EDC in general. And this document culminated in a meeting 3 weeks ago with, it was basically a committee meeting with two of the commissioners, Tom Wilson, Scott McDonough, and Daryl Kramer from council, and Holly Maxey, because I think it's no secret I've been harping on the edit tax, and there's a bit of an issue. Everybody's panicking about what do we do with the highway budget. You know, this guy Mike Hiles hates paved roads, which is completely inaccurate. You know, it's just simply, you know, what are we collecting the money for and what are we doing with it? And trying to figure out and navigate the waters of how this whole thing works. Had a great discussion with Mr. Wilson, Mr. McDonough, Ms. Maxey, and Mr. Kramer. And this was essentially the document that I went through with them, and I just simply started telling the story and talking. So it's a pretty lengthy document from a PowerPoint presentation kind of standpoint. I will get the press digital copies as well if you're interested in having. Once again, this is nothing official from the board. This is just my own findings, kind of helping me gauge where I think my activity with the board needs to be spent in directing and helping to encourage the development of the efforts of the board. So one thing I want to make clear is that any negative, anything that would be perceived as a negative in this document is essentially a SWOT analysis. This is where we're at. I don't care how we got here. I've only been on the board for 3 months. I don't care what the issues were a year ago, 2 years ago. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just looking at, here is the condition that exists today. The condition is what it is. There's no blame, there's no fault. I just want the board to be better. I want the commission to be better. So we've got some challenges with the EDC. Of course, we've got county budget challenges that continue to plague things. And I'll just run down the list here and we'll go into detail. I believe, based on my discussion, that there's been a bit of weak group cohesion between the EDC Board of Directors. So kind of a lack of cohesiveness and direction. EDC's been a bit of a flashpoint politically and in the public. There hasn't been a cohesive local EDC master plan that's been put together by the board and the commission and published openly. You know, this is what our objective is, what we really want to accomplish. There's also been fairly weak PR to the community about the efforts of the commission itself, which, you know, contributes to a whole lot of things. Unfortunately, I think this has put Frank into a tough spot because he has been left to sort of make his decisions as he goes, and you know, the board being what it was previously, and it's kind of like, what do we do here? And it's left Frank in a tough spot, and he sort of just attempted to do what he thought was the best thing at the time. There is currently, and you know, on the project management and the information front, there's a lack of cohesive project management. I know as a board member, I don't have access to the kind of information I know that as a business owner and a business manager, I want access to. And I'm used to business intelligence dashboards and, you know, looking at key performance indicators and, you know, ongoing measurable metrics that let me know any given time, how are we doing, you know, what the activity is. Of course, you know, this edit fund issue, I believe we're working upstream here on the money side because there's lots of opportunities for the county that we can be addressing through a better appropriation of the edit funds that give us vehicle for expansion of the business base and the tax base itself. There's been a lack of regional support and representation, which I know the SET program is attempting to foster a new approach on a regional master plan. And, quite frankly, I think that there's been a myopic focus of a lot of localized groups and factions that has really contributed to somewhat of a myopic focus of the EDC itself, the effect of that master plan. So let's talk about the budget challenges. Franklin County is no different than any other local county government. Public services cost more to deliver than a residential tax base can support. And I've seen numbers as high as 200%. So the money that you collect from a residential tax base is only half, in many cases, of what it actually costs to deliver services to that residence. So that means that we have got to supplement our budget with business tax base as well. This has to happen. There is no question about it. We cannot continue because, number one, the state constitution caps residential tax revenue, or caps property tax revenue across the board. But public service delivery costs are not capped. So cost of living continues to go up. The budget's going to continue to go up. So you can see we're getting ready to converge between, well, I think we're already in the midst of a convergence of the cost to deliver services are going to eventually exceed in a great way of what we can collect, particularly from a residential tax base alone. So we have to supplement with the commercial tax base. And in many cases, in most cases, economic development is the sole functional means through which a local government can directly sponsor and foster business growth and that commercial tax base. There's vehicles that are available through the EDC that can only be gotten. For example, certain homestead tax opportunities through an economic development revitalization district, which, corresponding to the project that's going on Main Street in Brookville right now. As an EDC board, we need to be coming right along and laying a revitalization district zone right over the top of all of these revitalization projects that are going on. We have the authority, we have the ability through the commission to be able to do these kinds of things. But because of the budget challenges that we're in, we're somewhat hampered in our ability to take advantage of all of these vehicles that the state already makes available to us. One of the other challenges, of course, a somewhat weak EDC board. This is my personal opinion, perception. This is not a personal criticism. It's just the efforts of the board have been historically a little weaker. And I think that at times that's created some arm's length between the directorship and the board itself. I know that in the past it has been indicated to me that there's been a certain level of fear and concern for being accused of violating sunshine laws if there's a basic discussion that goes on outside of an advertised official session. Of course, it's difficult to have an active functional board if everyone's afraid of being accused of violating state law, and we all understand what the sunshine laws are. We understand what the requirements are for advertising sessions. We know what we can and we cannot do as a board in an unadvertised conversation. We can't make decisions on anything. That has to come in the form of an advertised public meeting, and it will continue to only come in the form of open debate. I think this new board has represented a very open debate approach and has solicited input from the public, solicited input from everybody that's been around the table at this room, and we've attempted to change somewhat a level of transparency already in the 3 months that this new board has convened. And so that's, as long as I'm involved, that's going to continue forward. Another major challenge is the weak PR to community about the efforts itself. The website is not presently in a state still that I consider functional as an information distribution tool. We don't have the ability to deliver quickly, timely information about things that go on in our open public meetings, to be able to publish to the website minutes. And by midnight tonight, my personal recording of these open meetings, the public meeting, will be on the Facebook Franklin County fan page, because that's my only solution right now. But, we need a much better economic development website that helps to educate the public, educate folks as to the EDC mission, and even, getting into the intrinsic discussion of economic development 101. What do we do? Why is it economic development? One of the things that I get asked is, what does the EDC even do? What's it there for? Well, obviously, our mission is to grow that tax base. We want to expand and grow the tax base. So now we're not fighting over the fixed amount of the pie. We're actually growing the pie itself. I'm not having to go and argue with the commissioners and council about, hey, I need more money back in the EDC, and that's a zero-sum game because I'm taking it away from somebody else. We want to grow the overall tax base through the EDC efforts, and we're one of the only entities that's empowered to be able to do that kind of thing. Just on a personal front, I believe we need an email newsletter that people can subscribe to, not to take anything away from the Franklin County Observer. They do a wonderful job of email news distribution, but specifically an email newsletter about folks that are interested in the business development in Franklin County's EDC activities. That can be a subscriber type newsletter. You go to the website, put your name and your email address in, and every time we send out a newsletter broadcast, you would receive a copy. So, it ties in. We need more proactive marketing as a board of what it is we do. What do we do here? And, teaching people this is what we do. Unfortunately, being a marketing-oriented board, we have a non-existent marketing budget as a marketing entity. So that's part of my challenge here is how do we market with no marketing dollars? And, like I said, just that general education about economic development, why it exists, what it does. Additionally, another challenge is there's a lack of distributed information management about current projects. I'm in favor of just subscribing. I don't need an extended discussion. We don't need a whole enterprise system, with SharePoint or something like that for document management. We just sign up to a Basecamp.com subscription for $60, $70 a month and have unlimited project management that allows even business owners to have secure access to information just about their project that the EDC would then coordinate. So then let's talk about the edit funds. Another challenge: edit funds hampering economic development mission. I believe that effort to increase and supplement that commercial tax revenue base ultimately is being hampered right now inside of the EDC. There's a bunch of reasons for that, and I don't want to point the finger of blame. It is once again, it is what it is. But I'm pretty sure that our highway department's paying for road maintenance and services in areas that probably should be incorporated at this point. With the economic development activity that's going on centered around Metamora, I'm talking to a lot of the merchants down there about potentially reigniting the discussion about an incorporation initiative to try to get them self-sufficient, self-sustained. Without having an official voice of Metamora, I'm down there talking to the merchants, they see what's going on with the Brookville revitalization program, and they say, oh, geez, that's great for Brookville, but it doesn't do anything for Metamora. And I immediately point it right back at them. I said, well, who's the official voice of Metamora? Who's the town board that I can come and sit down and talk to that has the official capacity to talk about getting revitalization grants and getting these things? There's no one official voice that can step forward and represent that community. So things like getting grant money for the Metamora Fire Department and getting all of these grant opportunities to help develop the Metamora. I'm in Metamora. I have a Metamora address. I'm not in the village, but I'm very sympathetic to Metamora. I want to see Metamora grow, and that's one of the I guess on a personal level, that's one of the things that I'd like to see happen is more of that development take place. But I really think that this is a hurdle. Ultimately that means the edit tax is being used to fund the general budget and things in the general budget. I understand the economic challenges. I understand the difficulties of having to pave roads and pay for these basic services. But at the same token, I think I had a couple meetings ago, I used the analogy, it's like going to the bank to get a loan for your business, and then you turn around and use the principal of the loan to buy landscaping for your house. And it's nice, it makes your house pretty, but it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So we can't actually get a return on the intended investment of the use of that assessment that's currently being collected. Once again, state legislation gives really broad flexibility and a lot of power to the EDC for business development. It's one of the only vehicles that the local government has to grow that base if we figure out a business model and a business plan, and we're successful at putting objectives and a mission in place that allows us to go out and attract business, grow business, just simply provide those services that are needed to grow that supplemental commercial tax base. You know, we've talked about the representation regionally. We can't compete alone as a tiny county with the Stronger Economies Together initiative that's in place. It's pretty clear that the goal is to end up with a regional master plan, which will then be used at the state and federal level to determine use of grants and award money for grants. So, you know, the weaker representation that we have on those regionalization efforts, the stronger voice it gives to those other counties that are actually engaging in those regionalization efforts. So, you know, if these plans are going to be used to sway state and federal spending and grant allocations, then we want to make sure that we're adequately represented and we have our voice in there as well. And then this myopic focus of local groups, various factions, you know, this typical, you know, the small community politics, you know, and I understand that's in every community. I think the EDC gets pigeonholed just based on a lack of understanding and awareness about the function of the EDC and what it's designed to do and supposed to do. There's even been recent discussion that's come up again, you know, discussing the dissolution, you know, let's disband the board and defund the board. Fortunately, we don't think, I've discussed with Judd McMillan, and his opinion is that can't happen legally. And if it did happen, the edit tax that's collected would stay at the state level. So there's a distribution problem if the board gets disbanded. And I understand development brings the risk of the dilution of existing money and power bases. That's a local political issue. There's, you know, I hate to say it, the good old boy network, but it's true, it exists, and outside businesses coming in, outside money coming in. It's sort of a wag the dog sort of a scenario where, you know, we say we want these things, but in reality, I think there's a lot of folks that are content to leave well enough alone. They're fat and sassy with their place in the market, and the last thing they want necessarily is the dilution of their place in that market. I call it the big fish in the small pond syndrome a little bit. You know, there's some lack of transparency. I'm clearly trying to set my foot forward and put my money where my mouth is and publish these open meetings. You know, it's basically, here's what goes on. Here's what's going on. Listen for yourself. Take the time. Get involved. And I think that it's incumbent on us as a commission to further that and widen that effort to market what we do and present, promote, educate, inform, so that when we ask the commissioners and council for funding appropriations or an increase in budget, you know, we would like to do this, they do that. They understand why. It's not just a big mystery sandwich of, well, we're going to allocate $100,000 for this. What are they going to do with it? You know, no, guys, we're not in Barbados having fun at the casino. You know, it'd be nice, but that's just not how it works. The you know, general accounting office in DC might get away with those $800,000 Hawaii trips, but I don't think we want to do that here. So the second section is, what are the opportunities then? You know, I've bullet pointed some things, and by no means is this some sort of comprehensive list. I'm hoping that this opens a wider dialogue across the board. You know, just an open discussion about what it is that we do, what are more opportunities. So don't think that anything that I'm saying here is by any means conclusive. It's open for suggestion, recommendation. I'm the guy that's always willing to say what nobody else is willing to say, even though everyone's saying it quietly. I joke around and say I'm your Huckleberry, and you know, if you need somebody to be the bad guy, then I'll openly say it if I believe in it and I believe that it makes sense. So we want to strengthen the board of directors. We want to develop a local EDC master plan. Certainly, we've touched on strengthening the PR and outbound marketing of EDC activities. We want to adopt a regionalization focus and really promote local involvement in regionalization efforts. One of the things that's been discussed is securing a full-time grant writer through the EDC office to provide grant writing services. And then develop a strategy to secure more EDC funding for our local option income tax allocation that's coming to us, as we can demonstrate to the community and to the other government bodies that, hey, you know, we've got a long-term plan in place. So, strengthening board of directors. I put my money where my mouth is at on that front again. I'm trying to become more actively involved as a board member. I've offered my time and effort and energy doing research on grant opportunities and meeting with whoever we need to meet with. We don't have a lot of resources, so we need to leverage it, and I'm willing to do it. I know everybody personally on a personal basis can't do that or isn't necessarily willing. They're just willing to go and represent their public body's interests on the board itself. But I really think that as much as we can be involved, it really helps. Back to the cloud-based project management tool, Basecamp type subscription, something that is a browser-based tool that we as a board can log into and exchange messaging back and forth, share documents, be aware of projects that are obviously secured. It's not an open public thing. Giving businesses access to their own project space within our system so they can track where things are going on. I mean, I'm involved on the IT front with very complex projects, multi-million-dollar budgets, and I work with people literally all over the world. And we manage the efforts. For example, I have a project right now with a couple of outsourcing groups, and we manage the efforts of a couple hundred developers globally with maybe 4 project managers in an office in Cincinnati. We use these kinds of tools to be able to do that and account to our client. This is what we're doing here. The next opportunity is to develop a local EDC master plan. I don't care what that plan is. I'm just looking at the challenges and the opportunities that are out there, what we need to be accomplishing, really strengthening the service offering. What those services are, I don't care. I'm here to just foster that discussion. But I believe that we need to establish very succinct definitions of the services that we offer as an Economic Development Commission and a very systematic approach to what those services are as we deliver them and how we deliver them. Essentially, developing somewhat of a consulting services business approach to what we do as a group here. So if we're in the relocation services business, we want to know and understand what does that mean? What are the things that we offer? Who are we offering it to? Establish specific goals and measurable key performance indicators to determine whatever service that we're in, how effective are we? Is what we're doing successful? Are we being effective at whatever it is that we're attempting to provide as services to whoever the constituency is? I believe we need to create mid-range and long-range vision of community development goals and, with those specific measurable objectives attached to it. If that's to, build a hotel conference center at the lake, then, that planned project needs to be formalized. There has to be some sort of measurable, it's easy to just get lulled into the beer conversation of, I think we can make that happen. I talked to this person, that person, but whatever we're doing, is that pursuing the success of whatever that objective is? So how do you know what you're doing at any given moment? Is it contributing to the success of whatever that objective is? W. Edwards Deming said, if you can't describe what you're doing in terms of a process, then you don't really know what you're doing. And of course, W. Edwards Deming was the father of total quality management, Kaizen, the Toyota way. And so I'm a firm believer, in the IT services business, we do what's called managed services contracts. And, we are responsible for managing the information infrastructure for other clients on an enterprise basis. So we're dealing with their data, we're dealing with their information. We have to have a systematic approach to everything from information governance, security, decision-making, authority, a checklist of a flow chart of how the operation works. How do we actually do things? How do we make things happen? And then ultimately we have to educate, inform the public, and I believe that we really need to go on a PR campaign that prepares the community for real economic development. If we're going to do this and we're going to get real serious about it, let's either get serious about it or go home and quit talking about it. That's really I guess my sort of approach here. And I'll be the bad guy. I'll be the guy that says, hey, hold on. What are we trying to accomplish here? But I think we need to also, because of that education component, we need to prepare the community for what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to achieve. I don't believe the community right now, they don't even understand. They don't have a basis to understand what or why. So we start talking openly about these kinds of discussions and, we'd like to put a capital access facility together to attract businesses because we've got capital pool available to help them fund their operations. That's something an EDC board can do, right? We can issue bonds directly and enter into public-private partnerships with businesses. What do you think the result would be if we actually had a capital access program and we advertised it regionally to businesses? Hey, we got money for your company, but you got to move to Franklin County. Well, we'd probably have a line around the courthouse right now because that's one of the big problems of small business getting access to capital funding. So it's pretty easy to attract business if you offer business what they really need, they're really after. So, I touched on this already. Establish succinct definitions of services and systematic approach to service delivery. I believe it's very important to identify specific EDC clients. Who do we help and how? What specific problem are we solving for what specific client? Is this business clients? Is this taxpayers? Is this other government agencies? We have some decisions to make on identifying the constituency of individuals. Who are we serving and what is it that we're doing to serve them? We need to, in the marketing world, we call it a value proposition. We need to create a value proposition for somebody so they understand, hey, the EDC board solves this problem for you. Whether that's providing grants to other county agencies to help them offset their funding needs. Whatever those services are, we have to identify those specific clients. Who are we helping? How are we helping them? What specific problem are we solving? And then we want to create a marketing strategy for each one of those value propositions. We want to turn that into a marketing conversation. What is the benefit of that? So if I sit down and I talk to Alan and I say, hey, we've got a capital access program for your business. So if you're interested in potentially expanding your operation to multiple counties, but you need some, capital equipment financing or funding, you need maybe a loan guarantee. I can sit down and I can give him that marketing conversation, that benefits statement of this is what we do as a board. This is why you would want to do this with us. And we can start to develop that marketing conversation to whoever those constituents are. If it's the county commission, if it's council, we sit down and we say, okay, we've got, a grant writing program. So if you need to supplement your budget, come see us. And we've got a program through the EDC board that'll help supplement your capital budget needs as a body. And then, of course, we want to implement the marketing strategy for those services. So whatever that marketing strategy that is that we create, we want to put it into effect. We want to engage in those outbound PR efforts. So the other opportunity, establish specific goals and measurable KPIs to determine success. This is where we want to establish those long-range objectives and goals and then establish those incremental goals. It's sort of you reach the top of the ladder one rung at a time sort of approach. So if we want a hotel conference center at the lake, then we've got a phase 0, we've got a phase 1, we've got a phase 2. I mean, Jim, you're in the commercial construction business. I mean, we have these.
Work up the steps, you work up the ladder.
Absolutely.
You don't just get there overnight.
In our business, we have what's called a statement of work, right? So in a large project, we identify what are all of the things that need to be done in what order and divide that into phases. And here's what the client is going to get. Here's what we're delivering. And then we establish those targets for each one of those service areas with that measurement strategy. Now, we're in sort of a sensitive situation with the EDC because when we're working with businesses, we're working with largely confidential information for businesses. I kind of liken it to like the Job and Family Services challenge. You can't talk about a specific case openly and disclose publicly sensitive confidential data about a private company's private finances. But what we can do is we can say we've got, 5 inquiries for this particular service this month, 4 were resolved, and, I'm big on the outcomes. It's one thing to report on all the activities and a big list of activities. Well, we did this, we did this, we did this, we did this. Okay, great. I'm not challenging that in any way. I know that everybody's working hard, but what happened? What's the result of that? What do we think the result's going to be? What's the time frame? What's the project plan? Ultimately, then we want to establish public relations and marketing targets with that measurement strategy as well. So then if we're 80% of effort, we've got this 80% success effort, we want to promote that. We want to promote what our success rate is. Or if we're offering a service that we're not doing so well in, change the service or eliminate it, or, how do we do it better? But, at least be open, be transparent, because when we go back to the well and we start asking for money for this and money for that, if there's a big black hole and a void of information, it becomes very difficult for policymakers to cast a vote. Well, yeah, I'll fund your mystery machine over there. I don't know what you're doing, but I wouldn't vote for it. But. So strengthening the PR and outbound marketing of the EDC activities itself is an opportunity. I'm already publishing the full recordings of the EDC meetings for full transparency. So anybody that's in attendance, if you don't want something to be said or be known publicly, then I advise that you don't say it on the audio. It's that simple.
Have you gotten feedback from people
Yes.
about that?
They love it. The public loves it.
They are reading, or not reading it, but they are listening to it?
Yes.
It'd be a little long to listen to the whole thing, I imagine.
I've heard it's boring.
This
Yeah.
This is not Hollywood here. This is not the traditional plot model. So it's.
I just wondered if you had gotten any feedback.
Yes, I have had feedback, and people do like it and appreciate the fact that it's available now. How many people are actually consuming it? I can give you, website server statistic numbers. It's actually pretty impressive, to know how many people are actually downloading it, whether they listen to it, All I can track is how many people click on the link and actually download it from my server. Once again, that's my personal. I'm just doing this. I'm just saying, okay, here's the new model. Now, how do we shift that over so it's a formal effort for the EDC website, the EDC board, to be able to track the metrics? So now we can make that information available. We've got, I want to be a statistic machine. It's like, this is Ian's business, right? The power is in the information. That's the real power. And you can change lives. You can change a lot of things for the good if you have access to that information. So everything that we do, I'm a firm believer of metrics and measurement. And okay, how do we do that? What's the process? I want to entertain the idea of developing an annual marketing plan and associated budget along with that corresponds to all this stuff. Obviously, we've got a lot of work to do before we get there. But once again, we want to promote all this that we're now starting to develop as services. Obviously, we have to secure a budget for those marketing activities. And so that becomes justification for additional EDC funding that we can sit down and we can talk to the fiduciary bodies to appropriate that. But we have a plan. We have, here's why we need it, and here's how much, right? So the other opportunity is adopt a regionalization focus and promote local involvement. We've talked about that. One of the things is, and this is why I harped with Bill Shermer a lot on the app project, and I know where Bill's head is at with the whole thing, but just simply getting into that mode of adopting a more regionalization focus and a regionalized approach, and widening and including people on a regional basis for that project. And ultimately, I supported the grant as Bill. But I just wanted to promote that idea, hey, what happens if we include Batesville or whatever? I think that there is an education effort that needs to take place there as well. We need to educate and inform local groups about that need to participate in the regionalization efforts. And, as much as we can participate and promote and sponsor and foster, be the cheerleader for getting folks involved. I've floated this idea with a whole bunch of folks, and it's getting overwhelmingly positive feedback. And I think as part of those services that we deliver, well, obviously the county government is our constituency, part of our constituency. If the challenge is funding and county budget, one of the things that I think through the EDC board that we can immediately adopt as a service to provide is a countywide grant writing service function that would be employed through the EDC board. And so we would essentially hire a full-time grant writer to research and apply for state, federal, and private grants on
Do you
behalf
know
of.
about the Southeastern?
Yes, I do know about the Southeastern Alliance that we
You know,
have.
Southeastern Indiana Regional Planning Commission?
Yes,
They write the grants for the county.
yes, we have a contracted relationship with them.
So you want one besides them?
I think that there is a merit to actually having a dedicated grant writing function for Franklin County itself, and I'll tell you why.
There's grants that, there's people in the county government that they won't write grants for.
Who?
Like the highway department. And once again, correct me if I'm wrong.
And quite frankly, you know, I think our cost right now is $8,000. The number that I got floated informally was it costs us about $8,000 a year. But then I asked, how much do we leverage that grant writer? And I was told, we don't know. We're not quite sure what the activity is. I had to do a little digging to find out even how to engage that grant writer, and it requires the commissioners to actually make a motion and adopt a formal decision to even engage that grant writer. So I didn't get the sense that it was being leveraged to its capacity.
So in the grant proposal that was brought to us last week, something like that would have to go in front of the commissioners, be motioned.
It was
Before.
being written through them.
If it was being written through them.
So you're talking about a 30-day timeline.
Potentially.
Yeah.
And the other rationale is the use and the proceeds of the grants that are created as a service revenue. I want to try to adopt, where it's possible for the EDC, a service revenue opportunity, so that if we offer those services and then we basically charge for those services internally a couple of percent of whatever the proceeds of grants that are awarded. And I don't know what that number is. We would have to figure out competitively, you know, what would it cost, et cetera. But I believe that it's an additional way for us to supplement the EDC budget without having to ask to reallocate and take money away from the highway department and all of these different issues that we've got surrounding our county budget. If, for example, our grant writer would apply for and receive a single $1 million grant on an annual basis, and say the EDC got 5% as a fee for doing that, or 2%, whatever. You're talking $20,000, $50,000 as a service revenue fee to come back into the EDC budget in exchange for providing those services and managing and monitoring those services. So it's not just about spending more money, it's about creating actually a supplemental revenue stream for the EDC itself and providing those services back to the rest of the county agencies. There could be many services like this. I don't know. I'm just opening the discussion. Once again, these are just ideas I'm throwing out here.
Well, wouldn't you have to pay for the grant writer?
Yeah, there'd have to be a salary for the grant writer.
So you're talking about a full-time person here?
Potentially, yeah. Potentially. Yeah. I think that there's probably enough federal and state grant opportunities that are out there to be researched in all of the various areas that you can keep a grant writer pretty busy. And if that grant writer is successful at getting awards, then that means that there's opportunity for the EDC then, through the efforts of that grant writer, to supplement the EDC budget without asking for all these additional appropriations, what have you. We kind of become, I don't call it
You
self-funded.
may not have thought this out, but then are you wanting the grant writer to be paid through the general fund, and then you keep the money from that's gained on?
I haven't thought through that level. I'm just opening the idea up as, hey, here's a way that how can we creatively fund EDC activities in some capacity without, number one, raising taxes, number two, cutting services. Let's put our creativity caps on for a second and try to come up with some sort of an outside the box approach, as long as it meets state statute and code, and we're not violating some Indiana code in doing that. But essentially, I see that as an economic development activity. If we're applying for and receiving grants on behalf of county that's agencies that are not currently doing it themselves. That's outside money that's coming in to the county to supplement the money that's being spent here now, which means that that current money that's being spent can be reallocated to other things. So we're essentially we are expanding economic development. So maybe that's too outside the box. I'm once again, this is personal opinions. My last name's Hiles, Hiles.
It sounds like there's a lot of opportunity out there for people looking for grants. And if you don't know about them, I mean, that's the function of this grant writer is to say,
He gets full time just looking
Yeah.
for them, not only for economic development, there might be one for the dog catcher or fire department.
Right,
I mean, just
exactly.
when you start adding up all these different agencies and
One of the things that I found out was there's FEMA money, grant money available for tornado siren systems. I know we need a $300,000 siren system in this county, and I was looking at potentially attaching it to a rider as part of the, if we would have a real hotel project that came along and we were able to solicit and receive a $3 million grant through FEMA, that there would be some additional attachment money. Oh, by the way, part of that grant has to be, that FEMA grant for that portion of that construction money has to come through the Emergency Management Authority. So whoever your local emergency management body is has to be one that applies for that. Technically, it has to be applied through that body. Hey guys, by the way, we got some money for a tornado siren system. Gee, that'd be kind of nice to have here in the county. So we're not going to come up with $300,000 to pay for it out of pocket, not at least soon. So
Make any donations?
you stand down at IGA with a can. This is the tornado siren fund. So it's a big picture idea. I'm just throwing it out there for consumption, floated it. I've not gotten a single negative response on it at all. I did get the whole, the Southeastern Indiana Growth Alliance, or not SIGA, but
Southeastern Indiana
Regional Planning Commission. Thank you. We do have that grant, but I immediately follow back up. How do we leverage that? I don't know. So we're paying for it, but there's no concentrated, focused activity. Once again, through no fault of anybody, it's just who's grant writer? Who is a grant writer? Who understands that? How can this come out of this commission? How can we seize that opportunity? I'm applying a private sector sort of mentality to this, saying I see a need. I see an opportunity to generate revenue by providing that value proposition to those other agencies to fill that need through some creative approach. And in doing that, hopefully fund our own activities, fund our own efforts. Because quite frankly, I'd like a nice capital access program where we've got, $40, $50 million in some revolving loan fund that we can make available to businesses that are looking to relocate. Now you're going to get people's attention. That's going to get people's attention. So ultimately, this comes down to developing that full strategy to secure that EDC funding. Obviously, anywhere where we can identify alternatives like this to the current budget appropriation, using this creative thinking, if we can just become that think tank that says, how do we think outside the box on some of this stuff? How do we assist the county in these more creative solutions to budgetary issues? I see that as a function and a purpose of economic development. How do we utilize funding to back that capital pool? The state allows us to put together a local and a regional, both a local and a regional venture capital fund. We have the ability as a board to issue bonds and buy real estate and put together revitalization districts and all of these things that can be done exclusively through the EDC. No other government body has the power and the authority to access these types of programs. So, and the idea is ultimately by building that capital access program, we use that to attract those business entities, and that would expand that commercial tax base to offset the current budgetary ills of Franklin County government. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Just like drinking from a fire hose, I'll be happy to provide a copy of my PowerPoint presentation to the media if you guys are interested.
You got my email address?
I do not, John.
Thank you, Mike.
I know you have mine.
I have yours.
Thanks.